So good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Senator Michael Padilla, Linda Lopez, and House Representatives Liz Thompson and Christine Trujillo. As you know, we are heading into the legislative session with new executive directors and staff, where we have a lot of questions, and I'm sure they have a lot of questions. So we're so excited to have you all come on and have this discussion with them with some questions that we came up, and hopefully we can support them as they go into the legislative session. And for the first question, we know that you as lawmakers receive many requests for new or changed legislation from constituents. Not all can be supported. When considering whether to support a request, what factors do you mostly consider, and what makes successful requests different from those that are not? And feel free to popcorn and unmute as you see fit.
Or to ask for clarification. That was a long sentence.
A long question, right?
So are you referring to capital items or capital funding, general fund dollars, program dollars that already exist?
I think that our programs, well, they care about all of those things, right? They care about, some of them care about capital, though not all of them. They all care about funding for domestic violence. And we also have bills from time to time that we think to put forward, and occasionally they get all the way through, but often they don't, or it takes a few years. So and I think that our programs have the idea, and why wouldn't they, that they can, if they have legislation, that it's probably just going to get through, but there's so much of it that sometimes it doesn't, right? And that just doesn't make it all the way. So anything that you could tell them about what kind of moves you, what makes you think, yeah, that would be important to do, or that's money they should have, just anything like that would be helpful, I think, to them.
So in a lot of ways, I hope it's all right, I'll just jump in for real quick, and then I'll hand it over to my colleagues here. And thank you very much for doing this, by the way. I think creating these relationships well ahead of time is super important. Creating Doppler maps, if you will, of where everyone resides, where they work, where their program is located, and who are the area or surrounding legislators is super important. And creating those relationships well ahead of time is very important. For me, in a lot of ways, I like to hear a couple of things related to real people and real stories, and how the monies and the dollars and the funding will affect real people, in communities where there are services that might be deficient or needed or don't exist at all. I like to hear about that so that I can help you that way. Also, dates, times, facts, figures, locations, temperature, I mean, you name it, trends. What you're seeing is also very important for legislators to hear, so that they can understand why these items are so critical and so important. Also, if you're bringing to bear best practices that you have seen that have worked in other locations, and how they might have helped in a certain situation where the services don't exist right now, are always something that I like to hear about, so that where the throughput is there and it's a proven methodology on how to affect something.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
I guess I will go. Touching our hearts, that's where I work from, is what touches my heart. So we want facts and figures and all the things that the senator talked about. But personally, I prefer those on paper, because I'm not going to remember them in any way if you just tell them to me. So what I will remember is a story, and developing relationships is really important. And sometimes you may have a senator or a rep who is hard-headed, I'll just say it that way, who maybe isn't in favor of your cause. And so it's perfectly fine to try with your the one who represents you. And if you are not getting anywhere with them, it's perfectly fine to go elsewhere. And Linda is great. Linda knows who is for what and who is against what. So Linda's one of the best lobbyists in the building, in my opinion. So use her, and it's a crazy time of year for us now. So I would encourage folks to, the session is not a good time to get to know us, because we don't even know ourselves during the session. So in the interim, most of us will go out for coffee with you, and just developing that personal relationship and trust. Trust is important. I once carried a bill for a constituent because every meeting I went to, he complained, but I shouldn't have, because he was totally unreasonable. So, I mean, he wanted to put kids in jail for bullying. It's like, no, that's not what we're going to do. So develop trust, I think, is a big thing.
And what I'd like to add on to what my colleagues said too, is it's about building relationships. And now during session, I know sometimes persons only have an opportunity to come and advocate for a bill at this point in time. But I think what is really good is, I know we have opportunities now because of COVID. We now have Zoom, right, which helps a lot. Contacting our secretaries, setting an appointment. You don't have to come in person anymore. We can do a conversation over Zoom at this point, so that also helps. But during the interim, contact your local legislator, depending what part of the state you live in. But you also have those of us who are here and others who couldn't join us today that are advocates, strong advocates for issues around domestic violence in our communities. I know that there's been some concerns about what's not happening over in the Northwest quadrant of our state. So maybe some advocacy on that venue with us, but also, and Senator Padilla serves on Senate Finance, and I think one of our other members in the House who's here with us also serves on House Appropriations. And it's always good to talk to the money people, because they're the ones who help to foster that budget through the process as we go through the legislative session. But you have many advocates. Linda's awesome. She knows many of us, knows who are going to do the yeses, the nos, and the maybes. So working with her, but I still can't emphasize how much it is to, when you have an opportunity, show up to the committee meetings too, when we visit the different parts of the state. Talk to us person to person. That really makes a difference.
Thank you. And
I agree with all my colleagues. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I wouldn't have said it better myself. So there's nothing new to add. They are great colleagues who know their business, and I always try to follow their leads. The only thing for me would be, if I submitted legislation in the past, I would probably carry something or support it in the future, because I want to ensure that there's consistency in the funding and in the support that is necessary to make that program successful.
thank you.
Can I add just one? Something that's always very powerful is, and I don't know, I'm assuming my colleagues feel the same way. We're pretty like-minded, the four of us that are here today, in terms of our political philosophies, but inviting us to the actual location where services are, or the service delivery occurs. And you heard from Representative Thompson on, the personal stories. Nothing is better than to see the actual, service and in action, and where the deficiencies are. And hey, wouldn't it be great if we were able to provide, I was at a facility recently where you would not believe how, the work that they're getting done is truly remarkable based on the facilities that have been funded for them. I was overwhelmed, almost in tears, in terms of how hard they are working and what they are actually delivering versus what the state has done to help them with their program. But to actually go out there and see it, very powerful for me to see with my own eyes.
Thank you all for your responses. And I just want to throw out there again to thank you all for opening and mentioning, right? As Senator Linda Lopez mentioned, it is Zoom. We have the ability of Zoom, right, to have those conversations. So it really makes things really easy. And, meeting with you all, and thank you for letting us know in your openness for our programs as well, to reaching out to you and scheduling those meetings. And also, we hope to also maybe take you up on your offer or your openness and maybe inviting you out to our program. So thank you for letting us know that as well, because I'm sure that they will take you up on that.
I'm next, aren't I, Teresa?
Yes.
Okay, so let me see what we have here. what, the second question I think we probably covered, so I'm going to ask this one. What are some do's and don'ts for program staff to keep in mind when they're reaching out to you? What are some things you hope they will do and some things you maybe they shouldn't do?
May
I'll
I
start.
start? Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Go ahead.
No.
You're the senior. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Please go ahead, Representative.
Okay. To me, most advocates are very, very respectful, very responsible, and very courteous and professional. Rarely do I interact with someone who is a pain in the butt. And I didn't cuss, see, I told you. And one of the things that I appreciate is that they make the appointments. They don't just pop in, because we are really busy during the session. And it's important to try to ensure that that we have a schedule in place so that we can give them the time that we can possibly give them in our offices. Because somebody who follows me around in a circle and taps me on the shoulder, and I'm talking about the roundhouse, trying to get my attention, they're not going to get it, because I have a purpose in why I'm going around in circles, right? Trying to find the location of my meeting or meeting with somebody else. So scheduling with our staff and taking some time, they're always welcome, but making it purposeful is important. Thank you.
Can I just say something? Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm just gonna say that was a really interesting what you said, Representative Trujillo, because I think our programs, and we've probably contributed to this, we've said things like, hey, follow them around and tap them on the shoulder. I mean, we haven't said it like that, but we've said, get them however you can. And so we have not said to them, you really need to make an appointment. So that is hugely important to hear that. And so now we can do that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I was gonna say ditto on that for what Representative Trujillo mentioned. And again, Zoom, we have the capability. But what I would suggest is when you come to speak to us, or even on email, if you do it short and sweet. And I think we're all kind of familiar with just some bullet points as to what your specificity is on all of the issues. That helps. And it also helps for our secretaries that we have sometimes for them as they keep files and how they organize us. They can keep something in different files and, pull me out the one pager that I need. How much money are they asking for? And a lot of that really helps us in so many ways, because we are bombarded by many, many other entities who are looking for money legislation and such.
Yeah.
And I will jump in and say, be patient with us. And if you haven't ever done it, you can't imagine how crazy a session is. I mean, you've got 18 people asking for a meeting at the same time, and you're trying to juggle. So be patient with us, but you can be consistent, but don't be a nag. I emailed you 2 days ago and you didn't respond. It's like, I'm sorry. One thing that people should know is that in session, the senators, I believe, have an assistant to themselves. On the House side, 2 representatives share 1 assistant. If you're a committee chair, you have your own secretary for your committee, but things are just crazy. But I do want to say, we are just regular people. I mean, some people are so afraid of us. We are just somebody from your community who saw an issue or a problem or wanted to help and did the work to get elected, but we're not anybody special. We're just regular New Mexicans who are trying to make things better.
So
The only
I'd
person
say,
I won't talk to, I'm sorry, the only person I won't allow in my office is Linda Siegel.
Right, of course. I hope,
Just giving her a hard time.
I hope she's aware of that. Are you there, Linda?
I am here.
Okay, so she
I'm
heard that.
listening.
Okay.
so I would say ditto and trito to everything that you just heard. I think all that was excellent from my colleagues there. I would add maybe just a couple of more items. One is always know that we work for you. You don't work for us. We work for you, and some of my colleagues, I will unfortunately say, feel the other way, and it's unfortunate, but I know that none of the 4 people serving you right now see it that way. We all work for you, so please make sure that you underscore that with the people that you're representing and the people that you work with. So full stop, I think everything you just heard is good. I would say that defining an appointment makes a quality interaction and dedicated time to you for your purpose. And I love what Representative Trujillo said, which is, yeah, I'm going to stop and I am going to talk to everybody that wants to talk to me. I will stop and do it. Unfortunately, someone else is going to probably do the very same thing, and I'm going to retain about a third, maybe even less of what the individual said to me just before. But when I have a dedicated meeting, I'm sitting there. I might have an assistant come in and sit with me, a legislative analyst or assistant. I'm sitting there. We're writing down what you have to say, and we're specifically focused on you. So I think that's very important. When Senator Lopez talked about, it's something that I always, talk to groups about. A one-page executive summary is very, very powerful. If I had to stack up all of the paper I receive on an annual basis as a result of my senatorial duties, I could probably have a building or a stack of paper as high as the Washington Monument in DC. That I'm not kidding you when I say that. We are bombarded with. But when you have an executive summary on the top of what you're, with all the other data that you are bringing to bear, it is very powerful. A one-pager should probably have a couple of specific items. One is at the top is, what is the bill number? What is the topic? And if you can specifically tie it to a bill or set of bills, House, Senate, whatever, all in one document, that's great. The next section should be a summary of what is it that you're going to talk to me in that meeting about, that Representative Trujillo and I just talked about, which is you're going to specifically have a dedicated amount of time. Talk to me about, put that in the document so I can follow up. It'll jog my memory when I go back to look at it. The second piece on the executive summary, I always suggest to groups, is your data, times, facts, figures, locations, temperatures, colors, times of year, et cetera, all of the sort of the hard data and facts. And then the third thing is, and this is always shocking when I talk to people about this, and that is the third section is, tell me specifically what you want me to do. Because of everything I just have in my document here and everything I talked about, I want you to vote no on House Bill 12. I want you to vote yes on Senate Bill 422. And by the way, here's my telephone number, here's my email address, here's my carrier pigeon number. Let me know when you voted no on House Bill 12, and let me know when you voted yes on Senate Bill whatever. And when I say that we work for you, you don't work for us. It's my responsibility to call you if you ask me to tell you that I voted for that or didn't vote for that or whatever. Maybe I didn't take your position on it. I should be able to explain to you why I didn't do that, because I work for you. And so I just wanted to underscore that is ultra, ultra important that you tell me specifically what you want from me. And that way, and then to kind of encapsulate all of that, I take whatever you give me throughout the session and these one pagers, and I have what I call the ABC file. And it's basically my assistant and I organize everything by alphabet. And then sometimes we'll copy it if it's, say, dental. So we might put it in the teeth file, we might put it in the D file for dental, and we might put it in the orthodontic file for so that we can easily find it and cross-reference it and whatever. And then the other nice thing for someone like me, and I don't know if I'm assuming my colleagues feel this way, is then suddenly I have a resource to call someone when I don't, we're expected to know something, guys. I had the president of the Athrisco Heritage Academy High School, that I always invite my high school student body presidents to come up and spend a week or two with me, and they do. And I said, I want you to follow me around today. And I want you to, and I'm sorry I'm going on so long, Teresa, I apologize, but I want you to put a tick mark on this sheet of paper every time I change the subject and everything I had to talk about today. And this was a 60-day session, so anything goes, as we know, in a 60-day. And I think by the end of the day, we looked at it together, and I had changed the subject 412 times in one day. And so I was expected to know something or a little bit about those 412 subjects. And so as a result, I can go to my ABC file and pull out information on that. And I know I can call, Linda or Pam or Teresa or Shanna and ask you questions about that particular topic. So those executive summaries, they're super important. They're not just used about that. They're also used to have content and subject matter experts for us. Thank you.
And I'm going to jump in and say the only thing that's consistent at the Roundhouse is inconsistency. Time is merely a concept. I mean, you may, there may, you say, well, the agenda says that House Appropriations is going to start at 1 o'clock, and here it is 4 o'clock, and they haven't started.
Legislative time.
Legislative time, and that we actually do things like roll the clock, and what we, you know, and halfway through the session, we're on session calendar day 2. I mean, so please be patient. It's not that we're a caucus can be called at any minute, even if we had a meeting set with you, or it may be that there's an emergency committee hearing or whatever. It's not that we're disrespecting you. It's just that there's only one of us, and we can't be in the 37 places that we're supposed to be at one time. So just be patient. Bring a book, bring snacks, bring water, bring because I mean, you may be there much longer than you anticipated.
Thank you for letting us know that. And thank you for all of your responses. And you kind of answered the next question, but in your comment, Senator Padilla, you mentioned you have all these documents and all of this information that you obtain. And so the shorter, the better, right? But my question to you all is, what is the best way to get to written information, and what kind of information is helpful? Like, would you rather have it written, sent to your office, delivered? What is helpful?
For me, it's all of the above.
Oh.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to be quick for all of the above. If I can get it in written format, printed electronically, it winds up in my ABC file or my bill file for that specific bill. So if it's my legislation, then I'm dropping it in there, so I have more and more information all the time.
For me, you know, you've delivered packets in the past, and sometimes I'm so overwhelmed that I can't look at all the email that I receive. Sometimes my staff will do it. Sometimes they're overwhelmed. So the reality is, if, you know, we collect our they'll go downstairs and get stuff in the post office boxes. They'll bring them up to us and they'll sort them for us. And what I need, because I'm so, well, I'm not going to say, but I need to read physically the content. Even though I read it online, somehow it sticks with me a lot better. So having it delivered to my mailbox or to the staff, then they'll pile it up and sort it. And then I have a way to process the information a little bit more logically.
Thank you.
And I would say email is great, but I mean, some days we literally get 1,200 emails in one day, particularly if there's, and one thing I would advise against is like, so, you know, maybe something comes out nationally that they want you to share with us, and then you send it out to everyone on your email list, and they all come to us. And you know, if it's just a cookie cutter email, I may not have time to open it. So yeah, so make sure that you like personalize the subject so that we know what it's about, but don't make it look like, I mean, we have all gotten, well, the women have gotten emails that were addressed, dear assembly man. Well, I'm not a man and I'm not an assembly person. So, you know, at least do the minimum of knowing that we're your representative, not your assembly person.
Thank you. Thank you for that feedback.
And I just like to kind of wrap it up and say ditto for everything that everyone has said. But again, for me, my style of learning is if I have a piece of paper, one sheet, bullet points, short and sweet for what the issue is. And I do like to have something that I can even sometimes take with me to committee. Oops. As we're listening to testimony, sometimes I'll kind of flip through and see what, I know I saw something. So I keep a file, but I'll sometimes open it and flip through based on the topic that we're having on a particular bill.
Great. Thank you.
Can I add one more last thing? I'm sorry. So I just want to shout out to Representative Thompson for mentioning the whole so on email, yeah, it's very good and very powerful, but I don't recommend at all, by the way, the form emails. And when you collect a bunch of email addresses and then you pump out, you know, in 3 seconds, you know, 112 emails. That's great. I'm glad that that happens, but I always prefer, and I read every single email that I receive. If I scan it for just a couple of seconds, but I do look at every single one of them myself. I do that for a couple of reasons. So I can follow up with whoever's emailed, whatever, and communicate work that I'm doing in addition to what they're trying to reach me on. But also, again, those personal stories are more powerful when they come, rather than the 780th email on whatever. That's great, but I would rather you tell me a specific way this thing is going to help or hurt or should be changed or altered or whatever. And always be cognizant of how you're addressing legislators in terms of male, female, all that kind of stuff is very important because it irritates. We're human beings too, and I think that's very disrespectful to call a female legislator an alderman. Just call us legislator, whatever, if it's too hard to put the whatever. But also a personal email is much like a personally handwritten note is, I think we all appreciate that. That is really, really powerful with us. At least I think it is with me, Lisa.
Thank you so much. So definitely no MailChimp, but better for like a personal direct email with you all is better. Because those do sometimes get missed, right? Like we receive, if you're signed up to a lot of newsletters, then it's like you just kind of automatically already delete it right before even opening it. So thank you for that.
May I just mention, first off, this has been so helpful. I can't even believe how helpful it has been. I mean, and I also can't believe we didn't do this earlier. And I'm just thinking about the long list of things that I've done. I've been around a long time and I've done almost everything wrong that you guys have just suggested, especially, which is fine, right? I mean, like I can remember, but especially when I first got here, I had a lot I thought needed to be said, right? And I was sitting next to the sponsor of one of our bills with a very wonderful senator friend of ours. And she wrote me a little note that said short. And I thought, yeah, it'll be short. And I talked some more. And then she said it again, short, right? And I continued talking. And finally, she was like, big letters, short, with a bunch of explanation points, right? And then I got it. It's like, oh, short is better. And I think it just, sometimes we forget all the things that you said about how much you have going on. And we think our thing is like the only thing that you're thinking about. And really it's one of, as Senator Padilla said, it's one of like 412 things a day, basically, right? So this has been, so I'm not, we have more, but I just want to just point out how helpful, really helpful this is.
And can
So,
I jump in? If you're
yeah.
winning in a committee or whatever,
Shut up.
be quiet. Be quiet. I mean, you can talk people out. I mean, if we've got something else to be and you're still
We do it.
We do. I mean, if you're winning, stop and let us vote, and everyone can move on with their day.
Yeah.
If I can just say, I mean, I've had instance, I'm a prolific bill filer. I file a lot of legislation, and I can remember several times Senator Lopez probably acknowledged this for me. But I mean, I might talk my bill that's going to pass right out of passing. It took me about 2 or 3 years to figure that one out. Shut the heck up when you're in good shape. So
that's really helpful. Okay, so I'm next, right, Teresa?
Yes.
Okay, let's see what we have. I can't remember off the top of my head. We mentioned this a little bit earlier, but because there's so many bills that are filed, especially during the 60-day, we know that lots of them, it just runs out of time. Doesn't mean it was a terrible idea. It's just there were so many and it never could get to the floor. And I think programs, maybe that's hard for them. What advice do you have for them, or what can you say to programs about bills that were otherwise great, but just didn't get all the way through?
I will mention a few years back, I sponsored, working with a constituent of mine and other advocates, for a permanent order of protection, and how we changed the law, especially for those who their perpetrator had been convicted, and it actually happened to be her father. And he was coming out of prison, and he was still contacting her, right? Sending her little like from dad to daughter. And it was just very inappropriate. I won't say other comments, but it took us 3 years to finally get this permanent order of protection that once the person is convicted, right, of the heinous crime, that the judge actually put this and could sign it, and it would be part of the court order, so that anybody else would be convicted of, sexual assault, incest, whatever you want to call these heinous crimes, and the domestic violence that was associated with that. Also, it took us 3 years to get that legislation through. And it was, again, we go through one chamber, but then you have to go through the other chamber, or it comes from the House over to the Senate. And so it's not just sometimes if you're, how would I say, have a chance to meet with us and chat during the interim and before, we also have to work with our colleagues, right? So you can, and it doesn't matter who's the sponsor, we have to work with our colleagues and make sure that we chat with them, letting them know, what the particulars are. So we too have to do our own lobbying with our colleagues. But that particular legislation, I let my constituent know what was going on, and she was very patient. I mean, not the first year, no, and I too kind of got my on that whole thing. But by the third year, we had worked both chambers, the committees that needed to be worked with, and it sailed through and was signed by the governor. So sometimes the legislation may not get through the first time, maybe the second, for sure the third, but it just takes time. So if you don't get it through the first year, please bear with us, but it's a process that we go through. And of course, too, you also have to work with the governor's office. So as we're going through this whole process for the legislature, we too hopefully can advocate for you to meet with the governor's staff person who's assigned and kind of work it as the bill begins to move. So it's kind of that whole system. Thanks.
I would say patience. I mean, I've been trying to get an affirmative consent bill passed for, I think this will be the fourth go round. And and we actually made it through the House, made it to the Senate floor, and one senator got a bee in his bonnet about us saying that regents couldn't sexually harass people, and he didn't like that, so he essentially killed our bill. So we get frustrated too, but you just have to. And so the coalition that's been working on affirmative consent has been meeting monthly for 2 or 3 years. So it's frustrating for all of us, but don't get angry and say, well, you didn't do what you should. We're all doing the best that we can do, and just be patient. And I mean, I have other bills that I've been introducing since I was elected 10 years ago that still hasn't made it through, but I'm not giving up until it does. So you just have to be patient and realize that that we're like the senator said, we're human and we can't do everything. And some people just get a crazy idea in their mind and you can't get it out of their mind. And it may take years for them to get it, essentially.
May I add something too? On this issue, I've carried several bills that I have to redo because I struggle with them. We all work very hard to get our bills passed, very hard. It's not an easy process, even working with your own colleagues, to convince them that your bill is really an important bill. So don't call and cuss us out when your bill didn't pass. I've had that happen to me. I've had advocates call me and tell me, well, I had to do your job for you. I had to go and work it on the other side and things like that. Well, you're not going to get help from me anymore if you treat me with disrespect, because you don't know how I work with people and how much work is done without your observing it. And that's just not right. So don't cuss us out. I cuss, but don't cuss us out.
So I'll chime in on this one as well. And where do I begin, really? I mean, I have to tell you, when creating the Early Childhood Education and Care Department, I worked on that for almost 10 years. And sometimes it'll take 2 years before I even arrived at the legislature. I was, as a member of the Senate, I was working on this issue. And sometimes it's a change of administrations too. Sometimes you have like the flip over from one year to the next, and you have a new governor and they see the world completely different. So I would have to agree with everything that you've heard from my colleagues here. I will tell you that I've passed several bills literally 3 times in order to get them signed. And that's a pretty painful exercise right there. But everyone you're hearing from today on this, from the legislature, we have what my sons and I call stick-to-itiveness. We're not going to let it go until it's done, guys. And people know that about us. So that's one thing I want you to hear. I've had Senator Lopez and I have a colleague. I don't know if she remembers this, but we have a colleague that walked into a meeting and had a bill that could have probably, passed whatever. And the advocate sat down right next to this fellow colleague of ours and started crying and cussing this person out, this member out. And it was a pretty painful thing for that person too. So there's a number of ways to look at it. I would say that when you get all the way to the finish line, it doesn't quite happen. You have that much of a head start in the next session. And so capitalize on that. The other thing is, please don't get hung up on pride of authorship either. I've had bills that some of my colleagues I thought were better equipped to pass that bill. So I would maybe go to other advocacy groups that may be more helpful to help you get this done, and go to other members and explain to the current member who has the bill or whatever. I just think that, this is other senators or representatives going to be able to get this done for us. I don't get my feelings hurt. I mean, some of my colleagues do, but I don't. And then the last thing I'll say
Michael,
to you is,
you do. I've seen you cry when we take your bills.
I don't remember that one time, but it's possible. I guess it's possible. I haven't brought you coffee lately. I need to do that. I'm sorry. So one last thing I'll mention is, so I had a bill, Senator Lopez will remember this one. Boy, it was a 13-year effort. Several senators had it. I had it for about 4 years. And the third year, I couldn't get this thing done. It was on to promote broadband and telecommunications, rewrite the entire Telecommunications Act here in New Mexico. And I'll tell you, when I couldn't get it done in 3 years, you want to know what I did the next year? Maybe I shouldn't tell her this. I don't want her to know what I was doing. But I just simply changed the title of the bill and brought it to something that the effort had been started 13 years before. So when I got to the 4th year, I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to modernize even how the bill is being addressed. And so please be open to that kind of stuff. It can really be helpful to you.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you do for us and, giving us an insight and, to have patience. We know it's a long process, but we just want to say thank you for your efforts and, advocating for us as your constituents. I know it might take a long time, but, it'll get done at some point, right? Just thank you so much. Senator Linda Lopez, you mentioned earlier about a restraining order and permanent restraining order. And so the next question that I have for you all is, domestic violence remains a really significant problem in New Mexico. What do you believe the legislature can do to reduce domestic violence and its effects in our state?
May I start? Oh, go ahead, Liz. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Senator.
Okay, I'll be short and sweet. Thank you first and foremost to each of you for the work you do. You are the first responders in our communities when it comes to the issues on domestic violence. And domestic violence takes many different forms, right? One thing, and many of us have been advocating for this, is that we truly need a campaign, visible campaign throughout the state of New Mexico. Billboards, meetings. I mean, in other words, it has to be a real campaign to educate our community what's not acceptable. And it's about what Representative Thompson has worked on. I've seen, the different work that you have done. I mean, all of us have done at some point something with regards to domestic violence, sexual assault, intimate partner violence, all of these. I mean, my area, the area that Senator Padilla and I represent, our numbers are high on intimate partner violence. But you look at other parts of our state where those numbers are pretty high also. And a lot of it, I believe, is that we have to have a campaign. And it's not just a little small thing. It has to be a continual buildup and maintained. Getting the governor's office, getting a lot of our electeds engaged, but also, those personal stories, persons who are willing, because it's hard to share your story and to be public, and sometimes you don't want to because of other issues that exist. But we really need to figure out and use us who are here with you and our colleagues as to how we really have a campaign out there. I mean, it has to be visible, not just on TV, but on social media, working with our young people, our young women and our young men to understand that you don't go around bullying. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think lost momentum during COVID, and COVID has brought so much to the forefront and what else, and we're seeing the end result of that, plus what other administrations have done. Sorry, I talk with my hands on mental health and such, but I really would love to help and support and work with a campaign, because you have to get the word out. What is not acceptable? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll jump in here. And these are, we have to take care of behavioral health. I mean, there has to be a place for people to get the help that they need. And alcoholism and substance use disorders, we know play a part of it. Kids growing up seeing it in their homes is a part of it. So thank you, Senator Padilla, especially for the early childhood care and education department, because we need to start basically working with families, prenatally, if you ask me, and give them the support that they need so that they are not stressed by money. They are not stressed by not having a house. And then that will take obviously a generation, but if we don't, I mean, the early childhood permanent fund constitutional amendment, I believe, took 12 years to pass. Now, if you think if we would have done it the first year, we'd be 12 years ahead, but we finally got it, and it will make a difference in the long run. But we're behind. We're way behind. So there's a lot to catch up with. And I know people don't like to hear, you know, it'll take a generation, but for some of these things, it really will take a generation. But we need to get moving on it instead of saying, oh my gosh, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I say something, Teresa? First, it is true, and we know it's true, that if we want to do anything meaningful about domestic violence, it's going to be at the community level, right? That's where you really have to start, because an intolerant community that says, you know, no, that's not okay here, is the answer, right? There can be other answers, criminal justice system or whatever, but that's really it. And we know that's it. And we've been talking about it, but one of the problems is there's just not any money really for what would be called prevention, right? Because that would be considered, you know, prevention work. What would you see as the legislature's role in a campaign, like you were talking about, Senator Lopez? What would it be, helping us to get the funds for it, or how would you see, what could we do in partnership with you all if we wanted to like embark on something like that?
If I may, just a suggestion, you know, engage with your local legislators. You know, we know our communities, and who some of the players are, the different community leaders that we work with. And, you know, like in Albuquerque is working with our neighborhood associations, some of our local other advocacy groups that work in and with our neighborhoods, just beginning that conversation as to what we do, working with our schools, right? I mean, the list is there for who we are in our community, but I think doing outreach with your local legislator and use us. We do have a bully pulpit, if you want to say, and I don't like to use that word per se, but it's a place where we can stand and just say, this is, you know, this is not acceptable in our community, and kind of, you know, do that liaison work to bring people together. And as you said, Pam, it is local. Our local people know, and I think that's where we can be used. And also in the legislature, you know, we can talk about this when we have the microphone. And just talk about what's not. I think if we continue to keep that beat going throughout the communities, that may also help in many ways of getting the word out, what is not acceptable.
Thank you.
May I add something? First of all, I keep hitting that doggone button.
Don't worry, we'll edit that. It's
Right.
okay.
I think Senator Lopez really hit the nail on the head. It is, all politics is local. And sometimes the requests we get from cities and counties is usually about something that they have to build, fix a road or do speed bumps or lighting or something like that. And, we go to our neighborhood association meetings, we talk to those advocates, but I've not, at least in my personal experience, no one's ever asked me for junior money or capital money. And capital is not going to be used this way, but junior money to deal with homeless issues and domestic violence. And these discussions never even pop up at our neighborhood association meetings. So I think you all as advocates should start moving in that direction, because then their attention is focused on maybe like the advertising. Maybe if we all pitch in and give you a little bit of money for advertising through junior money, that would be helpful. But we're not getting that kind of interest or focus from our neighborhood associations. And I think you're missing a great opportunity if you don't engage them.
Can I'll chime in on this one, and then I'd like to go back to your original question. I know Pam kind of took us in another direction, but I want to go back to the eventually. But on this one, I thought Senator Lopez, and I thought all the comments you heard were very, very good. I would recommend that, kind of looking and identifying in the communities where your advocacy groups live and work and play and all that, already successful marketing things that are going on in the community. So for instance, wouldn't it be cool if we could go get the Balloon Fiesta to adopt, your coalition as their community outreach partner or whatever, and tag along their successful already and capitalize on their successful that would touch about 2/3 of New Mexico, maybe more, I don't know, in some way, shape, or form. And then the repetition and the repetitious nature of it would eventually, I'm hoping will sink in, as legislators. I hope I'm not saying something out of turn here, but we have to tell our colleagues things 3 times for them to hear us just 1 time. And sometimes you have to tell them 18 times for them to hear it 1 time. So just kind of tagging along with that and using already successful methods for communicating with the community, maybe even going and getting and creating relationships with individuals that have a very strong following in the communities, and having them adopt and putting words to what you're saying when they're out public speaking on a number of subjects for any number of reasons, having them adopt it, and people trust them, they follow them, they have a lot of respect for them, they identify them as a this or that leader or whatever, and being able to capitalize on that reputation they already have, because people will listen to them maybe more intently than someone that they don't have a relationship or don't know. Can I go back to the first item or the last item real fast? And I'll be real quick. I think one of the, on getting, more traction here, I would just kind of, be, so we all go at it as legislators very, very differently. We all have our own style and everything. For me personally, I grew up in a home with severe domestic violence. My father was a horrible human being. I had no relationship with him. And I've openly said this, and it's been very therapeutic to serve in the legislature, because I finally started talking about it, if you will. And so I brought a lot of that. My sisters are very powerful in my life, and they guide me in a lot of the legislation that I introduced, because they lived in that very same home. I was the youngest. And so as a result, I like to introduce legislation that's very proactive to attack this issue. The Early Childhood Education and Care Department, I've gotten a lot of work done there. I created the department, the CYFD reform, broadband, bringing broadband to people so they have another way of communicating and learning and getting information. Any number of other things. So I like to take a significantly proactive approach that might take 1, 2, or 3 generations to become part of the fabric of New Mexico. But I do recognize that we have to talk about and deal with issues here and now. So I think the marketing campaigns are super important, but I'd like to change New Mexico structurally. And so a lot of the legislation, I'm like Senator Lopez, we use our hands a lot in the Senate and the South Valley, so I think a proactive approach. That's right, exactly. So I think a proactive approach to change, to work on the state structurally is really important, because if we have a strong early education component of our state, which we are building right now, if we have broadband, we're going to have the workforce. So therefore people have hope. They have hope. They can pay that mortgage. They can put the food on the table. They can, do whatever they need to do for their families. So that's why I work on things that I believe are very proactive versus the here and the now.
Thank you. Am I up, Teresa?
Yes, I think that there's one last question. I think we kind of touched on it, but it's up to you.
All right, why don't you ask it that way?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for your feedback and letting us know what is the best way, like what can be done, right? Like the potential of it, and giving our program some ideas on maybe what can be done to hopefully hold a discussion in future, and how to continue supporting survivors of domestic violence within our community. So thank you. The last question that I have, or that we have, is what would you most like programs to know about the legislative process?
Like if they took one thing away from it, what would it be? Yeah.
Well, I'll just jump in. I've been trying not to go first. I did right away, and I want to make sure I give my colleagues plenty of opportunity they have wonderful things to say. But I'll just reiterate that all of this, down to the paper clips in the building I'm sitting in right now, they belong to you. So this is all yours. You are more than welcome in this building to come in here and advocate for your cause. We talked a lot about how to do it, and with suggestions that we have. I mean, maybe there's things that we're not even thinking about that you're going to teach us about how to better advocate and get messages across. But just always remember that we work for you. You don't work for us. That everything about this process, you are funding through your tax dollars. Everything that happens here is yours. So I just want to reiterate and underscore that. I mean, I think a lot of people do get a little nervous about coming to the Capitol for the first time or whatever, the Roundhouse. But again, it's yours. It belongs to you. So make it work for you.
I guess I will jump in, and I said this before, but we really are just regular people. Don't be, and I know it's hard. I still get nervous when I have to speak on the floor or something. So I just, our stupid microphones, you have to hold them down with your thumb, and your thumbs get tired, and I'm just whining. But I think the thing is that we are humans too. And we're trying to do the best we can for New Mexico. And be patient with us, be patient with our staff. Please, no one should ever disrespect our staff. I mean, we have wonderful staff in that building. And I think if you treat people with respect and be patient, I mean, that's going to be I'm going to get it printed on a t-shirt. Patience, I mean, and for me as much as anybody else, because things don't happen quickly. And, it may be 2 years before you can get a bill back in, because in the short sessions, if it's not on the governor's list of priorities, it can't be introduced essentially. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
If I may too, and thank you, Liz, for mentioning that too, is that the legislative process, like now for a 60-day, everything can be introduced. We don't have to have a special request into the governor's office, for them to authorize for a bill to be introduced. 60-day is open for everything. 30 days, the legislation has to be related to the state budget, unless the governor will give you a call, right? A little message that says this bill can be considered during the session. So as Representative Thompson said, yes, every 2 years it's open. You can, a lot of different bills will be introduced. And this is usually the session where we have many bills in the hundreds. When I first started years ago, we were like in the thousands, and there's just no way humanly possible we could ever get through that. So I think, again, it's patience. We are human. We do work for you. And, it's with honor that we are here to help and make our communities better. If you have any suggestions for us too, we're open to it. Let us know what you see as the person who is on the outside looking in. And, that there's always some good suggestions that come through that too. But be in touch with us. Sorry, be in touch with us. And let's figure out the plan.
What I agree with my colleagues. I have nothing additional to add, but if you come to my office, bring coffee.
Noted. All right, well,
Should we, Linda, are you there? Is there anything that you want to say? Linda. Uh-oh, I just got.
Hi, no, I'm
Hi,
here.
Linda.
I'm
Okay.
here. I'm here. I'm grateful for all of those are some of my favorite legislators. And so I really appreciate you all being on, and it's good for all of the domestic violence coalition members to hear this from you, because it has a lot more credibility than when I say it to them. Like, one pager, don't write a book and things like that. So thank you all very much.
A lot
I
of
just
nice
add-
things were said about you, Linda, before you got on, just by the way.
Can I add just one last thing, or one more thing? So there are a lot of new House members this year. There are going to be They're going to be possibly new senators in 24. One last thing I want to suggest to you is, so I would say that after, this is literally my 10th year this month. It was my 10th year in the Senate. So within about 2 or 3 years, or even 5 years in, I sort of developed 5 or 6 major swim lanes that I swim around in and work really hard in. So going to new members especially, and finding out what their interests is really important, and helping them adopt an issue that they're going to own and champion in the legislature, so that they can have that as a reputational thing that they do themselves. I think is a good suggestion also, to maybe find out who is most interested in issues that you're advocating for, adopt them and help them to become a leader in that area in the legislature, can really be helpful to you as well.
Thank you.
right. Well, I just cannot thank you all enough for coming on and giving us, hopping on with us and being with us to have this discussion and to hear responses and in support of our programs, right? We're really trying to support them in, like, hey, there's a lot of new staff, there's a lot of new EDs. How does that session work, right? What's a 60-day and 30 days? So thank you so much, Senator Linda Lopez, for clarifying that, right? Because some of us might not know that. So that's really great and really helpful information. And really, this whole panel discussion was really helpful, even for us at the coalition, in hearing what works and what doesn't, because we have sent those MailChimp announcements. We have done that in past. So it's good for us to know that for future. And I also just want to say that I'm really happy and really grateful to hear you all say that you all are open for our programs to schedule a meeting with you, to invite them to, invite you all to our programs, because I think that has been something of a topic for us. So hearing it directly from you, I think, is really fantastic. So I just wanted to say thank you about that.
And I wanted to ask you, does it look like I have a mustache?
Now, Representative Trujillo, you are making their editing harder.
It's okay.
Tracy, do you remember
You
when
look terrific.
I accidentally never put a funny mustache on, and I couldn't get it off? So
we did like an emoji thing at work where, you have like you can pick like stuff like glasses and things like that you can put on, or you can come on as a cow or a dog, right? So we did at a staff meeting, and Pam put on a mustache and she could not take it off.
And I had meetings that day, and I had this mustache, right?
Yeah.
I just want to add one more quick thing. I'm still learning about our process, and this is I'm going into my 5th term. So don't be afraid to ask us questions. And we don't expect you to know everything about this crazy world that we live and work in. So it's not disrespectful or anything, to say, I don't understand this. Can you help me? And we will. And I know, well, there probably are stupid questions, but generally, if you're really trying to learn something, ask somebody. It won't, we won't think less of you because you don't understand it, because I know I don't understand it completely yet either, especially the money processes. That's like Phoenix, was it, no, the Sphinx's secret, you know, it's like, I don't know how to get money into the budget. Sometimes I get lucky, sometimes I don't.
I still get lost in the building, guys. I mean, I do. And I would say it probably took me a year and a half to figure out exactly where the bathrooms were. I mean, it's just, you know, this is a public place. I mean, lots going on. Find the Buffalo on the 3rd floor and you're in pretty good shape. So, yeah.
Good to know. All right. Well, I don't have any more questions. I don't have the words to express my gratitude to you all. Thank you so much for making